Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, PD Reimagined, how on-demand PD empowers teachers and expands professional learning. Welcome to today's conversation. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the content director for eSchool News, and I am happy you are joining us today for what I know will be a very insightful and important conversation. This conversation is brought to you by Stride. Discover Stride PD's expanding library of on-demand, bite-sized, and mobile-friendly courses that meet the real-time needs of teachers and schools. Based upon micro-learning principles, their 100-plus courses are developed by educators for educators as content experts that help teachers, schools, and districts expand their approach to professional learning. Now, before we get to the conversation, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features on the platform we're using here for this webinar. The event is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. Now, if you have a question or comment for us during the presentation, there's a chat function that you can use. Feel free to use this feature to contact someone from eSchool News team if you're having a technical question. But if you have comments or questions about what the panelists, their insights and ideas, if they're resonating with you, if you want to go a little deeper into a particular, feel free. We can go off on tangents. That's the beauty of Zoom here. And we really encourage our audience to jump in. So now with these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with the conversation and some introductions. First, Darren Reed. Darren is the Senior Vice President and General Manager for Stride PD. Darren has led the tech enablement of education services, transformed business platforms and customer products into digital realms, and developed robust GTM strategies. He has also pioneered innovative school models, including blended schools in Chicago, San Francisco, San Jose, and others. With a deep understanding of education's challenges, opportunities, and trends, Reed brings meaningful expertise to the burgeoning edtech landscape. He's also an award-winning PD solutions he's worked with that is helping to innovate those teacher PD strategies and expand professional learning options for schools and districts. Also with us today, Joel Medley. Joel is the director for Stride PD. He is the son of a high school dropout and was the first person in his family to graduate from college. Helping his dad earn his GED, he knew education would be his life's purpose. Joel has taught social studies in middle school, high school, and at the community college level. He has been a school leader in charter, traditional, and other types of schools. While at Stride, he worked in teacher training and leadership development, which is his passion. So, gentlemen, thanks so much for taking the time to meet today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Yeah, I know, in the world of education, PD or professional development is one of those great catchphrases that everyone knows, and I certainly will, nod sagely when we talk about professional development, but it can be many different things to many different institutions and professionals. It's also a hugely important aspect of education, which I think many times can be overlooked at a district level or at a school level. I know just this week and the week before and around Labor Day, professional development can mean, well, traditionally, it could have meant a lot of moans and groans when it came to faculty members having to sit through various, workshops and other things that before you kind of got it started into your work year. So maybe we'll get started, and I'll ask each of you to talk a little bit about what your kind of cocktail party definition is of professional development, and to talk about what some of the biggest challenges teachers face with traditional professional development methods, and where you see this shift to on-demand professional development being addressed for those challenges. Darren, maybe I'll put you in the hot seat first.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, Kevin. And I'm with you. I've seen over the past few weeks the memes, and they get so creative, and the gifs, making fun of teacher in-service sessions in the summertime, irrelevant PD or outdated PD or PD from instructors who have not been in the classroom and don't understand educator needs. The time away from what teachers want by spending time in their classroom getting ready for the year. Having been a lifelong educator, both teacher and principal, I certainly understand that sentiment, and I understand the leadership and requirements that school leaders have, as well. So therein lies the challenge, right? At its core, to your point, professional development for any industry is a great thing. It should be, right? In that, how do I continue to advance and sharpen my practice and, get recertified, increase my salary, et cetera, et cetera. I think that from that regard, professional development at its core is a good thing. In education, it has become a burdensome requirement. Um, and unfortunately, some of the challenges, I'll just note some that we've seen in our study, um, both research as well as talking to educators across the country. PD is not always relevant for teachers. It pulls them away from the classroom. They feel like they have lack of choice in what they actually need support with or want to grow in. They often feel like they don't have enough time, right? Because to engage deeply in the PD. And then they also see that it's a lot of sit and get, it's, we got a school full of 100 people, and even if the PD is great, right? You're not going to meet the need of 100 different educators and what they need in the moment. So that has led to um, the groans and moans that we hear about PD, and I certainly understand it. And I think on-demand PD, as we'll talk today, will help get to solving some of that and really empowering teachers.
Yeah. Joel, does that what Darren talking about resonate with you?
It absolutely does. I mean, because if you stop and think about one of the things that we have both heard about professional development is, professional development is something that is often done to teachers rather than in partnership with them. And the ability to bring in on-demand courses and content that is readily available at the teacher's, fingerprints, it gives them that ability to do what they need when they can. As we think about, on-demand professional development, Darren and I have talked to, teachers all across the country. We've got surveys that we've performed, and we're hearing several things from them. One in particular is that, on demand is the right approach. I think we'll talk about this later on with what we have seen that has happened, particularly since, COVID has occurred. But teachers want more of that on-demand professional development. Just this morning, I got some survey results from a school that we worked with, last year, that every single one of their teachers like, yes, on-demand professional development is what we want to see. And one of the things that's, kind of near and dear to my heart is listening to teachers, getting those feedback results from what we have out there, and to hear teachers go, you know what, on demand, it's a safe space. It's a place where I can practice on some of these things that I'm not 100% sure about. And I'll give you an example. AI, artificial intelligence is a hot topic. And we currently have 4 courses on the Stride PD platform, and teachers have flooded to those. And I appreciate what one teacher, provided to us with feedback, and they said very clearly, I have mostly stayed away from artificial intelligence because I lacked the understanding. But now, because of those courses and the time that they invested on their own and expressed their interest, they are going to incorporate more of that into the classroom for the benefit of their students. That's professional development. It's giving those teachers ownership and letting them run with the opportunities.
One
Yeah.
other quick thing I would add, Joel is spot on, but I want to add one quick thing as well too. As we think about how technology changes the way we live in every other aspect of our lives, right? We were talking about that even before we came on here, but we have Netflix. We can have on-demand entertainment if we want it. We can have on-demand um, in a variety of ways, right? Our life is about personalization. How can I make all of this that's available to me unique to my experience? That exists everywhere, but not often for teachers as it relates to PD.
Right.
we have long since passed that threshold that teachers should leverage technology, should be able to leverage technology to personalize what's most important to them as it relates to learning. And I mean, and let's be clear, we're ultimately talking about what every teacher wants, and that's better impact with students. How can they do that better? And so that personalization is important.
Yeah, 100%. And to those points, maybe we'll ask the audience. And Chris, if you could throw up the first poll question that we have this afternoon, to see what your thoughts are on whether or not you believe that on-demand PD can enhance or improve the professional learning experience for yourselves. I'll give everybody a couple of seconds there to click through. Just so we can kind of take the temperature of where we are with the folks, whether they are as enthusiastic about the idea of online and on-demand professional development as they are in terms of the 8-hour workshop the day before Labor Day. that was always the standard one. So, and Joel, I guess I'll ask you. I mean, you're getting feedback all the time from the folks who are using already this on-demand experience. Is that something that has surged over the past few years, and again, a COVID effect? I think you kind of mentioned that briefly.
Yeah, there has been a COVID effect, and one of the things that we have noticed with a study, particularly done by the organization D2L, shows that with the volume of information or the volume of money that is spent on professional development, teachers are wanting more and more of that choice. They have the opportunity to choose what interests them. That gives them more commitment to the topic itself. And oftentimes they are looking for something in the moment. And when they're able to learn in the moment, that makes a huge difference for them. I tell Darren this all the time. One of my favorite parts of my job is I get to read that teacher feedback. I do it every Monday morning. And, to hear teachers come back and make comments about how what they just learned in this hour-long course that's built on micro-learning principles, how that's going to translate into a classroom practice change. That's what everything that we do, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And Kevin, it's the thing about that too, going back, having been a teacher and principal, I understand that rub, of, why are we doing this PD to, as a leader, perhaps the data suggests that we all need this, or it's a district or state initiative. And so there's a thin line there, and I understand both of them. And both are right. This is not, in lieu of the other or erases one. It's actually both. It helps districts and schools expand their approach to PD, right? There are going to be times where you want everyone to have a particular knowledge base in a thing, in a particular skill. Maybe that may be your focus for the school year. District or school data may suggest we need this, but that shouldn't be at the expense of on-demand PD, where teachers can still get what they want in the moment as well. So just wanted to make certain we acknowledge that this is really helping to solve the problem for teachers, but also solves the challenge for districts and schools, particularly at a time where we are experiencing a teacher shortage, and many are citing that we don't feel like we get the support. So great way to invest in teachers and show that you give them choice.
Yeah. Well, so the results from poll question number 100% were seeing the benefits of it. So at least we know how to direct our conversation, that we have to make any strong arguments for any folks out there. So glad that we're all kind of in the same boat. So maybe you both can talk a little bit about the ways in which the on-demand professional development can be more engaging compared to the traditional methods. And again, I mean, again, as we were talking before we started the webinar, I mean, there are certainly important aspects of being in person and together, and this especially at the beginning of a school year. Maybe it's depending on the type of PD that we're talking about. I mean, in general, when you're building a community and bringing in new faculty members and bringing back faculty members who have been around for a time to kind of go together, those things are obviously all hugely important. But maybe you could talk about how, is it fair to call these offerings and these strategies a supplement to a traditional PD?
I think so. I think I would say supplement and an expansion of the idea, more so an expansion of it. I'll give one example of this, right? I'm gonna embarrass myself here for a moment, but I remember being a teacher, and I'm gonna date myself as well. I remember we had, and you can save your laughter, but I remember when someone was coming to our school to teach us about this cool new thing called PowerPoint. And the whole staff was in the room and we were learning about PowerPoint. And if you ask any educator, if you want to see, um, you want it, the best test of bad PD is that the teachers will act like the students when there's a bad lesson. So it wasn't relevant to us. We were cutting up, making jokes. I'm in my 20s, but point being is 2 weeks later, this particular person who led the PD came by the teacher's lounge and saw myself and another teacher doing the most amazing things in PowerPoint. And he said, what, you guys weren't paying attention. How did you learn and now are able to do more than what I was even teaching? And I said, and we described to him this thing that we stumbled upon and how PowerPoint was a relevant tool now to us. And then we taught it to ourselves. So point being is that when relevance is important to educators and their time is valuable. And when they know in the moment when they need something and they want to have immediate access to it, they shouldn't have to wait for the next in-service or PD day to get that. And it's also another benefit is having access, relevance, but also being able to say, great, I don't have to wait for that. I can take a course on my phone. I can pop up my laptop. I can pause my learning. I can finish at home when my kids are asleep. Like it really expands and changes the idea of when learning can take place. And again, this is true in every other industry, except as it relates to teachers.
And Kevin, everything that Darren just said, it was about relevance to his classroom. It was about application to his students and their needs. That's what on-demand training brings when it's done well. We have reflection questions within those courses. It's not just you're getting content, but how do you think through that content? And with those reflection questions, how are you going to apply that into your classroom? You, in essence, are building your plan for that implementation. Again, micro-learning principles, you don't just look at brevity with our courses being about an hour in length, but you're looking at that constant cycling back through the content to reinforce that stickiness. And that's where your scenarios come in. Now that you've got the content, here's a series of scenarios. How do you navigate that scenario based upon what you learned? That gets to the relevance and the authenticity the teachers want and that they need.
And it certainly seems that, as an effect of COVID and just in general, the advancement of technologies, and probably as the faculty members come out of colleges of education now, and especially kind of the younger generation of professionals, it's a natural instinct maybe to go to online to search for something. I know fixing my washing machine last week, my first instinct was to go to YouTube, right? And see how that person does it. There is a distinction that we have to make, though, between just that instinctual grab to a 3 or 4 minute video on YouTube and some of the solutions that you're talking about in a professional sense. Maybe each of you can kind of talk a little bit about that, even within the aspect also of some additional support, such as real-time support, where a situation where on-demand professional development is providing a support for a real-time need in a classroom setup.
So Darren, I'll start with this one. So let's think about that application in the real setting. How do you know that an on-demand PD is successful? Teachers are using it, teachers are applying it, students are getting the benefit. Again, I have to go back to the feedback that I'm reading. We had a school that requested a course or two on trauma-informed instruction because they had a rather difficult situation that occurred in their setting. We grabbed a subject matter expert and went through that and created that course. And the feedback that they have been providing, it's exactly what we want. They're talking about it's not just student misbehavior. Student behavior is communicating something. The question is, are we as the teachers, the school leaders, listening to what that communication is to then drill deeper and understand? So it's bringing those kinds of cultural and environmental changes, but it's also getting right into the academic program. Let's be honest. At the beginning of the year, everybody has to go through compliance trainings that often are, just to check that box. We had schools that have requested, some compliance trainings. We did one on bloodborne pathogens. And the feedback that I got last Friday from a high school biology teacher is this was a great course. I'm going to use the content from this course at an appropriate level in my biology class because it's going to be more effective for the students at that point. That is taking learning in another course and making it relevant for students. That's what we see as success. And that's where a lot of that is making a difference because you can access it right here on your phone.
And to Joel's point, and to your question as well, right? Around, we have access today to more information than we've ever had, and it's going to be more tomorrow, and that's going to continue to be it. What then becomes, it's why the technology that was supposed to make our lives more efficient is sometimes seems to make it more congested, is because we have to curate, we have to sift through, we have to find, we have to locate exactly what we need, and that takes time. So what we do is Stride PD or on-demand PD can do is that it helps to curate those learning experiences for educators in what we develop for Stride PD in micro learning principles, right? It's not a full course, but it's not just a quote or a tweet. You need something more substantive. So our course is developed by educators for educators, subject matter experts ranging from college professors to consultants to teachers to principals, and focused on key topics. But it's also curated resources and rooted in micro learning principles where you get exactly what you need. You can apply it. You can have a takeaway resource for it. So I think that becomes, and once you complete it, micro learning meeting within 30 minutes or up to an hour and a half on average. But then you can not only have something immediately that you need, but now you actually have a PD clock hour that you can apply towards your recertification. Again, exposing myself as a teacher, when my 3 years was up, I was like, oh my God, I need PD. Let me go find it. What workshop can I go to? Teachers don't have to worry about that stress. They can have access, and it can be organic to what they're learning. And they look up over 3 years and they've amassed these clock hours. So that's another level of support as it relates to the innovation for teachers.
Yeah. That kind of leads us into a second question that I have for the audience in terms of flexibility and accessibility. Chris, if you could throw up that second poll question, where we are going to ask you, how important is the flexibility aspects of on-demand professional development? Is it something that's essential? Is it nice to have, or something that you maybe you haven't considered yet? So we'll give you a couple seconds to ask that. I would think that flexibility is certainly key. I know that for many professionals, for many teachers who are in the classroom, it's the idea that they can be home on a Thursday night and click in to have a couple aspects that is hugely beneficial. We talk about the teacher burnout being something that is a big challenge right now for districts around the country. And part of that is because they don't have that access to kind of pursue their own individual studies at their own time. So we'll see. Maybe I'll ask both of you gentlemen to kind of address that while we wait to see what the response is from our audience.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the idea of teachers being able to learn when they can. So if you think about it, we talked about it even before we came on. It's almost hard to think of any industry where there isn't a healthy level of remote work. And even us as Stride, as a company, as a larger Stride Inc., we're a virtual company. We've been that for with the distributed workforce. But we found that during COVID, we even became more productive, right? We can act, and so industries and companies all over the world have said, we can have a larger remote workforce, which means now we as employees can have flexibility of where we work or where we're located. It changes the way we live. Teachers, brick and mortar teachers, by and large, unless you teach in one of our schools, which is virtual, and meeting the needs of those various populations. But if you're a brick and mortar teacher, you can't do that, right? However, as it relates to your professional learning, why are we limiting them, right? So it's really not about on-demand as a unique thing specifically for educators. We all have on-demand access. And so it's allowing educators in the education industry to experience this and help empower their workers who, as we know, need now more than ever with this um, uh, large population that's aging out, new coming in, not staying as long in a single profession. We need ways to attract them. And if we don't, we're gonna be in much more trouble than we are now.
Yeah.
And to the point of flexibility and accessibility, it really changes the thought process. It's no longer PD week before school begins, or the one PD day that occurs each quarter, each grading period. It's no longer confined to the day. It becomes the learning culture, which is what you want in a school for teachers and leaders. That learning comes to you. It becomes part of your daily routine. If you have PLCs that are working in your schools, they can be working through the same content together and having rich conversations about that. The same thing takes place with your grade level meetings or your content team meetings. It's an opportunity for teachers not just to learn in isolation, but to have those conversations together and learn and grow together, because really, if we're a school community, that's what we all should be doing. And the opportunity to highlight that, to showcase how everyone is working through this particular course, everyone is choosing to implement one of those strategies, and then the walkthroughs take place afterwards. That's what it's about. It's an entire culture of learning rather than looking at it as just specific days that we devote to learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as a principal, I know we had mentor teachers all the time as an example, supporting struggling teachers. And the dilemma is always, well, how do we, so what resources do we have available to us? This is a great way to do that. And then also two things, just I'll add, teachers are the most ingenious, resourceful people in the world. And whether we had on-demand PD or not, whether it's 2024 or 1994 when I was in the classroom, um, teachers are going to find a big part of improving your work as a teacher is stealing resources. It's what we do, right? I saw a great thing down the hall. I saw this clipping here. I saw something online. And so that's never going to change. But why don't we value that and help empower teachers and help curate things that give them align their level of learning, right? Because people think that teachers don't want to learn. Yeah, they do. They learn every day on their own. How do we help them do that in a way where it's not on our terms, but also on their terms?
And so the results from poll question number 2, 80% sees the flexibility as essential. So again, we're have everyone in lockstep here in terms of the necessities. But maybe I'll put you guys on the hot seat a little bit and talk a little bit about the day-to-day use of these courses. Now you have 100+ courses. Some are curriculum aligned. Some are maybe more in kind of in the big picture in terms of instructional strategies, let's say, maybe a little bit more big picture for the for an educator who's thinking about improving the ways in which they teach in the classroom. Can you give some examples about how this flexibility is being put into use, it kind of on the boots on the ground? I mean, talk a little bit about some of the courses maybe that are being instituted during the day and which ones may be for later on in the evening.
Yeah, great question. So let's start with first year teachers. We're going to get to this a little bit later, but we know and we see one of the biggest needs that's taking place in education is those first year teachers are not staying in the field. That's something that our company has been very important to push forward, that we want to make sure that those teachers get a free year on Stride PD. It's not just that they get access, but we have courses specifically for them that takes the approach of you just graduated in May or December, and you're going to start that class in August or in January. What do I need to know about assessment? What do we need to know about a growth mindset? It's leveraging that expertise for them. And those are things that they will often be doing on their own later in the evening. So those are some specific examples for you in that regard, Kevin. Others that are more focused during the day have the perfect example for you. We have a series focused on grading calibration. It's looking at holistic rubrics. Now, the focus is on English language arts. So you have a middle school and or a high school approach. That's where your PLC teams come together. They are learning that content. They're going through the process where they're getting sample student works and they're scoring. not only are they scoring that, but they're also receiving feedback from experts on, hey, this is probably what you should have done. That then helps them have conversations among them as ELA teachers about, hey, we need to make sure that we are grading and we are calibrated together so that students aren't seeing two completely different sets of scores based upon those rubrics. Those are just a couple of quick examples. There's a whole lot more that we could talk about. I've already mentioned one other one, but I'll put it out here again. Artificial intelligence. That is one that teachers are trying to figure out, how do we leverage today in accordance with the school and the district policy where they are. So that's one that we often see teachers that will learn in the evenings, but also some that are doing that during the day, during their planning period, so that at the next hour they will implement something for their students.
And also too, what we find, right, is there is no single teacher persona, right? There's no single teacher usage persona. There's no single magic bullet topic or PD course that every teacher needs. And I think that's why it's a solution. You're going to have teachers that vary, usage that varies. You're going to have teachers who are like, I'm driven by being recertified. I want to stay current. So I'm going to build out over a course of the year how many courses I'm going to take. You may have teachers who think very differently. I'm going to backload it. That's great. But then you also have real-time things that happen. Many schools do DDI, data-driven instruction. They do professional learning PLCs. So if schools that are focused on student outcomes are doing interim assessments, short-term assessments, sometimes daily, weekly. So the needs of what teachers need vary often. We may not know that we need help in something particular. So now school leaders, in conjunction with teachers, can offer support, not just do better. I like to say coaching is, bad coaching is, all right, you're winning, keep winning. Oh, we're losing? All right, start winning. Like there's something more in between there. It's about what can I offer you to help you a little bit, and vice versa as you do that. So the whole idea is that having access to this is the value. And then we see the sort of the pathology, if you will, of how educators will use it. And the idea is that it varies. It's not we like to say we're content agnostic. We know teachers at different times need almost everything. So we want to have a growing database of courses where they can access what they need in the moment. So that's sort of the idea. We're still learning from them, both teachers and students.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a continuous improvement sort of situation, right? I mean, as you go from school year to school year. But when we go back and talk about that morale aspect, I'm going to touch upon that a little bit and talk about district culture. And again, when you look at with professional development, and I think we've made enough fun of it, but in terms of the kind of the top down, like, okay, you're going to sit and get here for a couple of days before you go into the classroom. When you see some of your more progressive districts, your more sophisticated districts who have been kind of implementing these on-demand professional development strategies, is it coming from a top down? Is it coming from a leadership perspective, or how much of it is maybe more on an innovative scale where it's coming from maybe some champion educators who were early on in discovering these resources as a solution, and then maybe it becoming a little bit viral?
Man, that's a great question, Kevin, and it varies. Education is a large industry. It can sometimes be slow moving, like the giant ship in the night. So when they find something, it can be this slow turning. But to your point, districts and schools always have these quick, swift, agile, speedboat kind of leaders who say, we're going to try something different, whether they're PD, from the PD department, HR department, school district level. And they say, yeah, we got these state requirements, these district requirements, but how can we do things differently? So even before on-demand PD, you have a lot of that. We've seen a lot of innovation. Some of the best PD ever is what you see in your school and somebody doing it well and somebody not doing it well, and having those who do it well kind of shit. Like that's organic and that's happening all the time. But what we see now is districts saying, wait a second, we have, monthly or bi-monthly PD days where students are going home either full day or half a day. And what they are struggling with is, we have to now find the single PD thing that gives everybody PD. Well, they're saying, wait a second, why don't we now mix it up? One day can be all school PD. The other PD can go take your Stride PD courses, pick something that you want, pick something that you need. So that is, and again, that's just one of many different examples. I don't know if this is the point Joel will share about the district usage in what we've seen, but maybe we can pull that
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I don't know, Chris, maybe we can pull up this one slide, but I think, Kevin, this is what we've seen, some ways in which districts and schools innovatively have started to incorporate on-demand PD. So if you think about it, and these are just three ways we've seen, but there are many more. The first one is, let's say I'm a district or a school and I want to have a, common knowledge base amongst all my educators around a particular topic. It can be targeted instruction or whatever it may be. This is when you would assign a course to a whole group of people. And oftentimes when we do that, we usually as schools or districts bring in a speaker, but inevitably, you have absences, you pay usually a large amount of money and travel, et cetera. And then you have to control for, what's happening in that learning time. So you don't really know how efficient the learning was, but we can still accomplish that with on-demand courses, ensure that, because all courses have built-in assessments and practice, so you can at least know once they completed, there's a common knowledge base. Secondly, we've seen a combination where districts have great face-to-face PD, and they leverage on-demand PD to do a flipped classroom model where they may assign courses as pre-work, they may incorporate courses within the face-to-face PD itself, and then they also have continuing learning post the face-to-face PD. But as we talked, even if all those models work well and they're good PD, whether it's internal or external, you're always going to have teachers, and rightly so, say, but that's not what I need in the moment. Well, that's where districts and schools use it in this targeted way, where they say, you can still, on your own demand, take the courses that you need. You have access now to everything. And I think that's, very, very general, but very easy way to understand how having access to on-demand PD for a school or district immediately enhances and expands your access. We've talked to rural districts that say, man, I really wanted to bring in, a PD, but it's expensive. And well, now I can bring this virtually. We've also had other districts say, I paid $20K for a presenter, and now it's a one and done, but we'd like to continue this learning, but the person is gone. And I know I've talked a lot here, but I want to say one other thing too, about the presenters themselves, because this technology doesn't only change the experience for the educators, it also changes the experiences and empowers consultants and experts. I remember, doing PD, and I would go to school and share some different strategies or acts to come. But with technology, I can't scale that. I can only meet who's ever in my geographic area or whatever I can afford to get around to. But now, working with subject matter experts, my content can now live on a professional development site, and it can be made available to educators all over the nation. And it could even fuel my ability to go to other places and help schools and districts at greater scale. So it really is helping expand the industry from both sides.
And I don't have much to add to what Darren said because he hit the nail on the head. But if you even look at some recent research in the last couple of years, I think it was in Ed Week back during the summer, highlighted a district that indicated they have to do this many hours every year, but we're going to give them teacher choice, and they can go get that during this time period. And teachers loved it. Why? Because they know what they need. They know what their students need, and it gives them that chance to go pursue and chase that piece. So it's neat to see how all the districts and individual schools, as well as teachers, are using. We've had one school where a teacher simply said, "Hey, what if we could?" and then finished that statement. The school leader then contacted us, like, "Could you do a custom build for us on this?" And we're able to meet that need. It's on demand, just has so many opportunities to really bring what a school needs when they need it.
Well, of course, another essential kind of tentpole to the whole PD strategy involves, what is the impact on improved teaching practices, and how can we measure those, engage those, and show a return. As we all know, every district has a school board. Everyone wants to know, as a greater community, now more than ever, maybe for better or for worse, maybe just the focus being on districts' education practices and how they're being improved. So let's ask the audience, I guess, to start off. Chris, if you could throw up that other poll question. What is the impact on teaching? Where you are, have you experienced on-demand PD? And how has it improved those teaching practices? Has it been significant? Has it been moderate? Or maybe only slightly? Again, judging from the first two questions, I think we have folks who have seen the impact and how it can be effective. But while we wait for those results, gentlemen, maybe you both can talk a little bit about how districts can measure this impact and how do we show results from these dynamics that we've started to put in place.
I'll just add really quickly, Joel, I'll let you jump in as well with some specific examples, but I think you're exactly right. And it's one of the things that lacks often is like, yeah, we've invested in this, but what's our return? What's the impact? I think there are three particular areas, and there's certainly more that districts and schools can focus on. Number one, I think teacher retention. There's a direct correlation in data saying that teachers they don't feel like they're supported. We talked at the beginning about this sort of us versus them as it relates to what we need as teachers. But when teachers feel supported and connected around what they feel supported, then there's a reason that they would want to stay in the profession. Money aside, which is a whole nother show, and I'm a huge advocate that teachers need to be paid more. So I don't want them to think this is the sole. But the other one is teacher satisfaction, right? It's this is a metric that schools and districts look at in terms of evaluating leadership effectiveness at the school and district level. But then most importantly is outcomes for teachers, their practice. Are they improving their pedagogical skills? This is something that's easily measured. Every administrator in the country worth their weight understands what good quality instruction looks like, has a rubric local to them, and they should be able to say, hey, I can see improvement in your practice based on what you've been exposed to from a learning perspective. And then lastly, all of this matters only if it moves student outcomes. So many dynamics at play, as we know. That's what makes this job and this industry so challenging. But without a doubt, has this helped our teachers improve their practice, ultimately impacting student outcomes?
And Kevin, I'm going to get into a specific example of a district that we partner with that really gets to one word that I think everything Darren just talked about can fall under. It's intentionality. So it's not just let's grab this on-demand PD and release it to our teachers and we'll then measure what it's going to look like at the end. No, you've got to be intentional going into the process. So this district partner that I'm specifically thinking of, they had a pilot program that they wanted to run with individuals that they had identified as potential future leaders, in that district. They worked with us. They got the choices to take the courses that they wanted, and they rated them. So we got that feedback from them. Hey, I really like this. Could have done this. What about this? All of that was then rolled up to the district, and based upon that limited pilot, the district then went out to their teachers and their leaders. Would you like to have more of this? And the response came back, absolutely. So now we have that district that's coming in, but that's not where it ends. It then gets to the next step of our goals, what success looks like at the end of this year for using on-demand professional development is number 1, number 2, and number 3. Then you start to build the plan of what PD would then match to those specific aspects. So the more intentional that you become, and knowing what you're looking for in your academic needs, and then matching certain courses across the district, that's how you get to measuring the impact. That's where you get to see the satisfaction in the teacher retention. And really, again, I have to use this word over and over and over, but it's intentional. That's what makes the difference.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we have opportunities for discounts for districts who want to get started right away. We have great opportunities for pilots where for a select time, districts can experience this, very similar to the district Joel just mentioned. And that's validating for us, right? It only helps us when we learn from educators and districts about what are your needs, what challenges are you seeing, we can build our content roadmap to meet those needs, both generally and specifically. But more importantly, to your point, Kevin, right? It allows us to walk alongside districts to see what this impact is. And I think any district worth their weight should be doing exactly what this particular district and which is why we're offering these kind of pilots. So anyone who's joining us today as well, if you're interested in signing up or also a pilot, certainly reach out to us as well.
And Darren, you had mentioned earlier the kind of the Netflix aspect of this, and I guess that's where the kind of feedback comes in there too, in terms of the loops of people watching the courses or programs and rating stars and leaving comments and kind of driving forward. It's the same sort of concept.
Absolutely, and Joel can speak to this. I don't know, I'm not going to expose my wife, but every time she orders something from Amazon, she's close by what's it. But it's different for me. She immediately goes to every review first, right? She wants to know what other folks are saying about this particular product. Educators deserve that same level. If I take a course, what are you not what you're saying about it? What are my peers saying about it? What are my colleagues saying about it? And so every one of our courses has that built in, and it's raw and it's real, and it helps us improve, but it also helps us. It's validating as well. I'll let Joel speak to some of that.
And I'm going to give you one very specific example. It's when we initially launched our 3 artificial intelligence courses, we started getting feedback that one of them had too much cognitive load. Those ratings were not what we had seen with the others. So then we stepped back and we looked at that course, like, what do we need to do? And we decided that course needed to be broken into 2. And it was interesting because right before we released that one course broken into 2, I received another piece of feedback on that course and reached out to that teacher just for some additional follow-up. And I got 2 interesting replies. The first one was, I had no idea someone would actually read that. And number 2, that is responsive to try and meet the needs for what we are identifying. We had that new course out in just a little over 30 days. So it is that Netflix approach. We want to learn, we want to get better, because ultimately we're here to add value to teachers so that they can add value to their students. And that's our heart and soul.
Yeah. Now, I knew part of the toughest part of my job this afternoon would be to end the conversation. We can go on for this for a while. There's so many different aspects, but I do want to tap into your insights on, I think we've pretty much established a really good where the state of play is when it comes to on-demand PD. But let's maybe kind of look ahead a little bit, and where do you see some of the advancements? And when you look at some of the schools and districts that have already adopted this as their strategies, any particular innovative approaches that kind of stick out, and what that means for kind of the rest of us here in the next few years going forward?
You mean as it relates to on-demand PD in general, or?
Yeah, and in districts, and some innovative approaches that might be not in play right now, but might be coming around the corner. And we've already mentioned AI. I'm sure that will have an aspect in the creation of your courses itself.
Yeah, great point. I think that's a great question, Kevin, because I think what happens, I always say, trying to think if this is a good example, but I remember being a principal in 9/11, not necessarily direct correlation, but you'll get the point here, is that, after that happened, it was then that principals were like, if you're a principal in our district, you get a cell phone. Like, it was like, we are going to change the way we operate now. We had an office of, safety that focused on something that we had not conceived before, right? So it was a crisis, and it didn't always have to be a crisis, but usually organizations respond, and they're usually those kind of significant milestone events that change the future. Similar to like COVID, right? Online learning used to be that thing over there that, that's odd. We even talked about getting on camera with Zoom seems strange. Now it's second nature. We don't even question. We just turn our cameras on. And I think similarly that districts, while they're leveraging offerings like us, and they will continue to, there are some districts who are saying, how do we create our office of virtual learning? How do we create our office of on-demand PD? How do we build that into the muscle of what we do that will then ultimately change education as a whole, right? And that's, having been a traditional educator for years, and I was a principal of a math, science, technology focused school. And then, coming to K-12, but, some years ago, I realized, wow, there's even more that I even thought we could do with technology to change the way teachers teach and the way kids learn. So I think innovative districts we'll start seeing that become a part of school districts the same way we see, transportation department. So I think that's just one way.
And one other thing that I would add to that, my background is primarily middle school. So we would often take our eighth grade math teachers to the local high school and would sit down so that we could have those vertical articulation questions. What is it that we're seeing in our eighth grade math that's being taught that, or when students are coming to you, there's weakness there. How do we plug those holes and fill those gaps? But again, that's a ride. That's us physically going, to that school. What is the next step in on demand so that I may be on the far southwestern, corner of my district, but I'm going to do something, collaboratively with those on the northeast, leveraging, the technology that we have. Where do we get to the point of, we have a sweet spot of our courses being about an hour? Where is the limit? Does it need to be 5? Is it 15? Where can you push that micro learning to ensure that you have fidelity to the content and efficacy with the implementation? So there are some of those questions that are going to be interesting to see. But, if you think about it, when I was in school and here in the South and it snowed, you didn't go to school. That doesn't happen anymore. If it snows, it's a remote learning day. It's just one of that pieces of natural evolution, and it's going to be interesting to see where that plays out.
And Kevin, I can't believe we've gone this far, Joel, without talking about promising practices.
Oh.
But we have we at Stride, our larger company, we've had a conference called Promising Practices we've done for the schools across our network across the country for about 12, 13 years. This past year, that now lives with Stride Professional Development, and we've opened that virtual conference to educators from around the country. So if I'm a district or a school or a teacher, no longer do I necessarily have to only travel to conferences to get the conference experience. We now have a virtual conference this year, 2024. It brought together over 11,000 educators from across the country. We had keynote speakers who presented at all the national face-to-face conferences. We had panelists, breakouts, calls for proposals. So for individuals in school districts who sign up, for example, to Stride PD, not only do you get access to the innovative courses, you also get access to a virtual conference that connects you to educators in a way that your district could not have before, right? We're usually limited by our school or our district or maybe our state, but now you can share ideas and connect with educators from across the country. We are so excited about that. We actually won an award this year for that remote learning conference, and just another way that we can expand and rethink, how teachers come together.
Right.
Yeah. Well, to wrap things up, I guess, and I'll channel our audience here. Obviously, everyone's enthused about the concepts that we've been talking about. Maybe they're not as far as long in the journey of putting these things together. What would be your advice in terms of just taking those first steps? Is it kind of communicating it to the wider community? Is it kind of introducing it to some champions? Give our audience members some first steps in terms of making this what looks like a great concept into a reality in their schools and districts.
Two quick ones, and I'll just share here. One is because we've talked a lot about the teacher shortage today, and of the teachers, about 8% attrition every year.
Right.
And first year teachers are highest number within that group. We've partnered, with our CEO and our company. We've said that we're going to support that by giving access to every first year teacher in the country to Stride PD free for a single year. So this is, folks say, are you like, no, we want to give them an extra leg up to help them get a strong start to the profession. So if you are a teacher, if you're a district who just onboarded 500 new teachers, or a school that has 20, the district we talked about, referenced earlier, has 200 new teachers. All of them get it for free. So I would say let's start there, right? Let's have your teacher sign up for free your first year. Also, I would encourage you, whether it's through Stride PD or others, pilot it. We have year-long pilots where absolutely free. And should you want to continue, you can get a discount beyond that. But I think, if you're not certain, test the waters with it, get feedback. And similar to the district we referenced, do your due diligence and learn from your district and school educators about what they would like around PD.
The only other thing that I would add is this. If you're a teacher, if you're a leader, take a course.
Yeah.
If you go to our website, stridepdcenter.com, we have a coupon code. You can take any of our courses free of charge. Take that course. See what that experience is like. If you like it, share it. Then someone else on your team, you like that, then you continue to share. That's how you start to build that groundswell to then go, hey, this is something that we really want to have happen. How can we make this happen at our school? So
Absolutely.
just get involved by taking those courses.
And to your point, Joe, you just reminded me of the other thing, right? It's being the leader in online learning, right? As Stride K-12 for over 2+ decades, moving something online is not like we're going to take the same thing that happened face to face and just put it online. Like, unfortunately during the fast pace of COVID, it was like, let's go online, let's take the PDFs and let's just, put them online. We want to be more thoughtful, so we would love feedback. Our courses include a mix of video and listening and reading and built-in assessments. So it's a true, we try to, hone in on the micro learning, but also what does great adult learning look like online? So being able to have a standard of what quality looks like is important for every district and school as well.
Well, Joel and Darren, I really like to thank you for your time and your insights. I think this conversation brought a lot to the table for our audience. I'd also like to thank our audience for joining in and answering in the panels and adding to the conversation as well. As a reminder, you will get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. It's a good piece of professional learning, I think, of on-demand professional learning. We kind of created our own course ourselves here. So again, it was really an enjoyable time. Thanks again for participating and have a great day. Thanks, guys.